In the Company of Charity is a podcast by the Daughters of Charity of St. Vincent de Paul. Each episode will be discussing the church, society, and service to others, all through the lens of the spirit we've received from St. Vincent de Paul, the Saint of Charity. Join in the conversation by sending your comments and questions to companyofcharity@gmail.com.
All right. Well, we certainly welcome everyone to the podcast. We're very excited that you're listening with us today. We have a very special episode of In the Company of Charity podcast.
Yeah, welcome back, everybody.
Yes. So today we're going to hear from Bella, who is currently finishing up her year as a Vincentian Mission Corps volunteer. And she has been placed for the past year at the L'Arche community. Sister Elizabeth, do you want to share with the group what exactly L'Arche is?
Sure. So my understanding of L'Arche is that it's a community, kind of a somewhat of an open community of folks who have mental disabilities, physical disabilities, those who do not have disabilities, all living together, not in kind of a way in which one group is taking care of the other, but living together as one community, each sharing their gifts and talents and vulnerabilities. And it's a really a beautiful concept, and there's large communities all over the world. And Bella was, sounds like, when you guys hear this interview, you'll see she was really, really blessed by this experience.
Yeah, and I think it really does connect when we think about the spirit of who do we surround ourselves with in our company, who do we invite into our space as people who have that spirit of St. Vincent de Paul and St. Louise de Marillac, of serving the poor from a place of being a servant, rather than here I am with my abilities and my gifts, and I'm just going to sort of give them to you, bestow them on you, sort of from a higher place. That's, not at all Christian, really, but
Right.
Certainly in our spirit, we come as equals, and we lift people up and we serve them rather than having a sort of superior attitude.
Yeah. And, there's a certain arrogance, I think, too, that sometimes we can fall into. It's pretty easy when we think we're the ones who can do it. We're the ones who have the abilities, and then there are those who have a disability. There's some way in which they don't have it. And I think that what we see in the L'Arche community, certainly what Jean Bonnier wanted to show was everyone contributes. Everyone is a gift from God. Everyone is born in the image and likeness of God, and we all share in that great gift of life. However that happens in our lives, and that everyone is a gift, and that's certainly celebrated in the L'Arche communities. I worked for a time before I came to the community, became a daughter of charity, worked at a center called the New England Center for Autism, and I was kind of a house mother to 9 autistic teenage boys, really almost men. They were 16 to 21.
Interesting experience.
It was one of the most amazing experiences I ever had in my life. These young men were in varying stages on the autism spectrum, most severely disabled, most nonverbal. Many couldn't walk, but they had just a wonderful life about them, and they really, I think what they did was they helped me to see the true depths of humanity. And anyone who knows working with autistic children, they tend to have repetitive behaviors, sometimes some compulsive behaviors, where they may rock back and forth or have finger flicking behaviors, and they'll do it for hours. And used to think, wow, how did they do that? And then, you watch some people who kind of rock back and forth, they tap their toes, they, do things that are also compulsive. And you begin to realize that, inside, we're all the same. We're all the same.
Right.
We all have our quirks, and we all have those things about us that, there are ways in which we cope, and I began to see my own kind of vulnerable humanity up against, these young men. And we were able, really to laugh at each other, but also to be able to help one another. So it was a great experience. I was really glad we were doing this interview with Bella today. You did a great job.
Yes, excellent. I think in that idea of internal poverty, the poverty that we all experience, I certainly, for those of us who have been blessed to have those experiences with people with other abilities, differing abilities, so to speak, it helps us to get out of our comfort zone and to be creative and to try to communicate and connect in different ways. And I think it stretches you and challenges you in ways that you just don't usually try with people.
Yeah. It's especially when you're working with people who are nonverbal. I think that sometimes is difficult because that is how we communicate. We tend to think that it's our voice, it's the way we connect with one another, and you begin to realize that over time, you begin to find a language that is a common human language through sign languages, through symbols and other kinds of sounds. That words all of a sudden aren't the only way. And so those who don't have words the way I do have words in their own way, and I have to learn their language as well as they try to learn mine. So it's definitely brings you into that place of not just your vulnerabilities, but also to see the absolute giftedness of the other. You begin to realize that what you think is so cool and hip about yourself, maybe not so cool and hip after all, but that someone else is while I might think that they're struggling, because they're, again, classified as disabled, it just means they're not doing the things that I can do, but that they have their own way of being in the world, and it's beautiful and glorious, and it's a gift to be welcomed into it. So,
Excellent.
Yeah.
Well, we hope everybody that you enjoy this interview with Bella, and keep in the conversation. Let us know what you think, and certainly if there are other people that come to mind that you guys would like to see us interview, send us a shout out, and enjoy this interview with Bella. Well, here we are. Welcome, Bella Davila, to the podcast. We're so glad you could join us today.
Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
So, Bella and I know each other, so it's just so funny to be together on this podcast, recording an episode. Bella, tell us a little bit about who you are, what you're doing right now, and your connection with the L'Arche community.
So, my name is Bella, and I'm currently a Vincentian Mission Corps volunteer here in St. Louis, Missouri. And I've been a part of the program for 1 year now, which means we're just about finished up, not too much longer left. And I serve alongside a L'Arche community, which serves with adults with developmental disabilities.
So tell the folks a little bit about how L'Arche works, and maybe the difference between a regular facility run by the state versus what L'Arche does.
Yeah, so L'Arche is a community for adults with and without developmental disabilities who pretty much just share life together, and you learn together and experience God together and just form mutual relationships, which I think is just different than a state model, because we really focus on the importance of relationship together and being together and how to live together and rely on each other.
That's pretty awesome. Tell the folks what would be a typical day in the life, because you don't actually live in the L'Arche house. you live with the Vincentian Mission Corps
Correct.
volunteers.
Yeah, so I'm a live-out assistant is what they call us. There's assistants that live in, and they obviously share life in a different way. But for me, like on a task level, I go in and I do anything from like a hygiene or medical need for the core members, and the core members are the adults with developmental disabilities, and we call them core members because they're the core and heart of our mission together, and without them we just wouldn't have the mission that we do. So yeah, I do anything from a hygiene or medical need to whatever the core member needs to make it a good day or a great day, if that's at all possible. I for sure only ever have great days there, and usually when you go into L'Arche, if you go into a home, you'll see a whole lot of joy and laughter and love shared, and just a bunch of mutual relationship, and we just grow in equality with each other, and we try to figure out what that means for us.
But you didn't start out with L'Arche or having a lot of experience with folks with developmental disabilities.
Yeah, not at all.
How did you get connected then?
So with the Vincentian Mission Corps, you have the option of either picking your ministry for the year or getting assigned a ministry. I went the route of being assigned, so the board of Vincentian Mission Corps decided that L'Arche should be a good fit for the skills that I had. And I had never worked with adults with developmental disabilities really in my life. I had done a few minor things, like a 4-hour service project, but nothing that had depth to it and made me really reflect on who I was. So I met L'Arche through the Daughters of Charity, which run our program, and I was very nervous at first and fearful because it was not anything I had ever done. I was quite scared and kind of doubted my ability to be able to work in a L'Arche home because I was scared of accidentally violating someone or not being able to accept someone for their disability, not knowing how to love them in a way that they needed. But going into a L'Arche home and seeing other assistants with the core members and core members with assistants, I kind of realized as long as you can love, you can be at L'Arche and you can share those gifts in any way that is needed, and everyone has something to offer in the community.
So you're saying you felt a little maybe inadequate at
Oh
first.
yeah, 100%. No experience at all. Yeah.
That's a difficult space to be in.
Yeah. I was losing sleep over it every night leading up to the opportunity. Yeah, I was quite scared about it all. And I did some research and I tried to learn more about L'Arche and adults with developmental disabilities, and it wasn't until I got there that I realized, like, oh, I don't know if my research is going to help me much. I was just, I work with 2 women who have Down syndrome, which I knew a little bit more of, and I work with 2 women who are nonverbal, and I think it was the 2 women who are nonverbal specifically that I was like, I don't know how to love someone we can't communicate,
Yeah.
And that was really hard for me at first, and I'm sure hard for them as well, because I'm sure they could see that I was struggling, probably on like an external and internal being. I was kind of uncomfortable at first, but as time went on, thanks be to God, I got comfortable, and eventually that comfort turned into a whole lot of joy, and I now love the ministry, and it just fulfills my heart in a way that I didn't really know I was hungry for until God put it in front of me.
And I think sometimes those opportunities, we sort of maybe grow up and have in our minds what my life is going to look like or what my plans are. Yeah. And here you had something come in just straight out of nowhere that completely changed things for you. Yeah,
I remember looking at the list of places that they could put me in, thinking to myself, like, I think I could do anything but L'Arche. I was like, I know I can't do that. Like, that's not my calling. And then when they called and they were like, we think L'Arche should be good, I was like, I think we misunderstood something.
There's something wrong here.
Something happened. Yeah.
So what's it like, when you're working day to day with someone? You said your relationships with them grew. They always talk about a lot of communication is more about body language than anything else.
Yeah.
How would you say things grew with you and the core members there?
I think just like any relationship grows, getting to know each other and telling each other about what we like, what we don't like. For me, I really reached the point of like a deeper relationship when I got to see the core members on good days and bad days. It was those days where like I wasn't having a good day or they weren't having a good day that I think our relationship deepened because we spent that time together and worked through it together, which was really crucial. But yeah, just through sharing life and getting to be together, and through meeting their families and being a part of their circle and learning about the other assistants and just kind of jumping into that community helped me to develop those relationships.
And they welcomed you.
They welcomed me a ton, yeah. And that for sure was a big point for me, was how welcoming they were to me being a part of their community. And that gave me the space to be able to welcome them into who I was, because they made me feel just so comfortable at first. Even, like, despite my discomfort, like, they were like, we accept you for who you are, and we ask that you do the same for who we are. And I was like, I think I can meet you there.
That's what service is about, is
Yeah.
meeting people
Yeah.
and being in it together.
Yes. Oh, yeah. The, like, serving alongside piece is so important. Like, I'm not there to serve them, and they're not there to serve me. We're there to serve each other. And that has just, like, made all the difference in the world for me.
And so, we talked about this earlier. One of my favorite quotes from Jean Vanier is about how everyone has disabilities, and some of them, for some people, are on the outside, and for a lot, those disabilities, quote unquote, are on the inside.
Yeah.
So when we talk about vulnerability, how did that work for you in this setting with L'Arche?
For me, I had to explore my inner poverties, and that was really hard because I had never had to do that before at L'Arche, or in general just had to explore my inner poverties. I realized that I had a lot of discomfort when it came to adults with developmental disabilities, and I was kind of like purposely avoiding that kind of population, and I knew that it made me uncomfortable, but I didn't realize how crucial it was for me to explore that. And that was such an inner poverty that I didn't know was there until God was like, now's your time to go forth and explore this, and I need you to. Otherwise, you won't be the full servant I have made you to be. So for me, that was the moment when I put my vulnerabilities on the table, and the core members put their vulnerabilities on the table, and we both just helped each other through it. And I'm blessed, I think, in a way, because my vulnerabilities I can more hide, but at the same time, I almost feel that that's a disadvantage, because it's harder for me to allow my vulnerabilities to come out, where adults with developmental disabilities have the advantage of just being vulnerable, and because of that, they're so close to God's heart, and they allow people to be so close to their heart and closer to God through them.
How has your prayer changed, if at all, through this experience?
I think my prayer has changed into more of a relationship with God, where I don't really know how to explain what my prayer life was prior to Vincentian Mission Corps and L'Arche, but I now genuinely feel that I have this relationship with God as if he was another person, and genuinely there with me, which I don't think I felt the same way until I was with L'Arche, and I knew those adults were with me in a very physical sense, in a very fulfilling and life-giving sense as well, a kind of love that gets you out of bed, and a relationship that you want to go chase.
Yeah.
Is kind of how I would explain my relationship with God now, where I know I have to get up and be at L'Arche because that's where I find God, and the ministry is just so important to me.
And they call something out of you.
Yeah.
That you didn't know you had.
Yes, exactly. They forced me to rely on gifts I didn't know I had. Yeah.
Amazing. So what would you have to say to people who sort of maybe have their own groups that they feel uncomfortable around? For example, maybe folks are afraid of homeless people, or they feel uncomfortable around the elderly because they don't know what to do or say. What would you recommend to people, maybe specifically young people who haven't had a lot of experience, but maybe have that desire to serve?
I say, in my personal opinion, where your discomfort is where you have to go, because that's where God needs you to grow the most. If you're always comfortable, you never challenge yourself, you're just not going to grow. You're going to kind of get stuck in your box, and I think it's just so important for you to go outside that box, and as we were saying, not step outside the box, but jump outside of it in a way that you can't imagine yourself going back into that box, because you've now met God somewhere else and allowed that to fill your life in a new way. And it's just at our discomfort is where we're going to find that growth, and in our discomfort is, I think, also where we find our most truest self.
And I think, for me, when I think of how lives unfold, it's not just about me and God anymore. It's about this community of people.
Oh, yeah.
It's about the people that we serve who are teaching us where God is.
Oh, absolutely.
And showing us, hey, you're missing something. Look over here.
Yeah.
And that's the spirit, That's the spirit when we reach out, when we get uncomfortable, and then allow God to use that.
Yeah.
I wish there was a way to help people get it.
Yes, I agree. Yeah.
But what a special gift, and perhaps those families out there who, they have a child with a disability of some kind. I get so excited when I see the Special Olympics or TV commercials that highlight those things, or even little Facebook videos of people with Down syndrome standing up for themselves. And I think it's such a unique time where we can highlight the gifts that everybody has, not just the people who are quote unquote normal.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And we all have a lot to learn, that's for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
So, parting thoughts for the folks out there listening. Why should they care about L'Arche, for example? Why should we be reaching out to people with disabilities? Why should we be vulnerable too?
I think because it draws out more in us that we didn't know that we had, and we have more to give than we didn't realize. And I think for me, a lot of what made L'Arche so important is when I thought of the poor, I thought of people who are like financially and material-wise poor. And that was my experience prior to L'Arche. And then getting thrown into this ministry, I started serving alongside inner poverty that I had never had the opportunity to really serve alongside in this kind of magnitude. And it has made me, for sure, I think, a better Vincentian and a better person because of it. And I think that L'Arche just has that impact on people, and it makes you feel loved in a way that is just like irresistible. It makes you feel absolutely special, and the way God makes us feel is how L'Arche makes you feel.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us, and just blessings on these next stages.
Yes, thank you.
Awesome.
Peace and blessings.
You too.
And now it's time for your Vincentian Pulse.
Hey everybody, it's Sister Liz here with a quote and thought from St. Vincent de Paul. The concept is this: the poor as our lords and masters. St. Vincent de Paul told the first sisters, he said, "Let us, my sisters, cherish the poor as our masters, since our Lord is in them and they in our Lord." I think so often we maybe go past people in the street who are in need, or see someone who's suffering, and we look but we don't really see. Maybe because of indifference, maybe because we're too busy, maybe because they're the 5th or 10th person that asked us for money as we passed by. But as people who have a Vincentian spirituality, we have to see Christ in the people that we meet, so much so that we would treat them as the boss. Sort of lords and masters seems kind of very old-timey, 17th century perhaps. But are we letting the poor be in the driver's seat? Are we going to them instead of them having to come to us? That's the kind of attitude and spirituality that we have as Daughters of Charity and anyone else who follows the Vincentian way. And it's a challenge for us to decide what am I going to do when I see someone? How can I be of assistance? What are the feelings that come up? The discomfort maybe, the fear maybe. And how do we get past them that, knowing that Jesus Christ is looking back at me? That's what we're about. And it's not about us giving to someone in need, but it's us as brothers and sisters in Christ saying, hey, what do you need? What do you really need? And so that's our challenge today. Next person you see who's poor, who's asking for help, what can we do to stop and see Christ in them? And then what can we do to respond?
Thanks for joining us on the Company of Charity podcast. We'll see you next time.